On today's episode of the Locked On Texans podcast, no Pitre, big problem. The Houston Texans will be without their star nickel player, and was the bar set too high for sophomore quarterback CJ Stroud? We talk about that and more on today's show.
You are Locked On Texans, your daily podcast on the Houston Texans. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Battle Red Nation, I'm credentialed media member and Texans football analyst John Hickman, alongside the man with the big hat and the even bigger smile, Brian Big Sars Bearfield. Thank you for making us your first listen of the day and for being in every day of the show, which is a part of the Locked On Podcast Network family, your team every day. On today's show, we will be talking about the Texans' issues. Sarge, we've come to the realization that these problems have been hiding in plain sight this entire time. We also take a look at, was the bar set too high for CJ Stroud? You had an opportunity to ask DeMeco Ryans a great question, and his response was, we'll get into that, but we open up today's show just talking about the loss of Jalen Pitre. He will be missing some time. You can get started with a big return on FanDuel this season. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Jalen Pitre, 65 tackles, 1 pick, tied for career high in pass deflections with 8, one forced fumble, one of the best players on this defense. That's a top defense in the league. Sarge, the Texans have no player to replace what Jalen Pitre brought to this team.
John, I got a question I need to ask you before we even start.
I may have an answer.
Did the Houston Texans cut Desmond King too soon?
Absolutely. They never used Desmond King in the first place when they had him, and I thought that was a problem this whole time. Like, give Jalen a breakout in coverage. But, yeah, they cut him too soon.
Well, John, listen, Desmond King was like your insurance policy, right? You may not ever use it until you need it, if you know what I mean by that. You may not use that thing for 3 years, and then all of a sudden, in the middle of 2028, you need it. You haven't used it since 2023. So, you got to have it just in case you need it. And so he was that in case of emergency, break glass. Now, you could tell us better than anybody about Miles Bryant if he would be able to slide into the position that that Jalen Pitre was playing. But I don't know what you lose when you lose a Jalen Pitre. You lose a very strong tackler. You lose a hybrid cornerback, safety, linebacker. Like, he could play 3 different positions. And so you lose that. You lose a ball hawk, because even though he didn't have a lot of turnovers, he was responsible for a lot of the turnovers that the Houston Texans had this season. And so you're going to lose that. You're going to lose a player who gives his all on every play, a player that's very instinctive, a player that loves to just play football. Now, with that being said, there is another player on that defense that plays the exact same way that Jalen Pitre plays. The problem is he's too old. And what I mean, I think Jimmy Ward is 33 years old, and I'm about to be 53. So who am I to call anybody old, John? But in football years, like in football years, he been there for a minute. And so the speed isn't there like it used to be. The instincts are still there. We seen that with the 65-yard pick 6 that he had against the Tennessee Titans on Sunday. And he's played the position before. So you can slide him into that position. So here's the funny part, John. In training camp, we watched as Jimmy Ward he even self-admitted, I got to pull back some because I don't want to hurt my own teammates. So you do put somebody in that same position who gives you the run support that Jalen Pitre gave you as well. I just don't know about covering.
Yeah, I think so. With Miles Bryant, he's played in a total of 11 snaps this year. I think the Texans' problem will be just finding guys to substitute what the player that was in that position gave them and how the substitution is going to hurt them on the bottom of ranking those players. Like, okay, we can substitute Jalen. You can't really substitute what Jalen Pitre gave you this year. Again, he's one of the top 10 players on his team, a top player on that defense. I don't think they have a player that can substitute what he brought overall. But if you look at the run support, okay, Jimmy Ward maybe can help us, but can he help you in coverage? No. And then now you got to look at, can Miles Bryant come in and give us some help? Well, I don't think he's going to be too much help, because now we got to look at knocking off a lot of that rust. He hasn't touched the field a lot for this team this year. Okay, Eric Murray, we got to give him more snaps now. Do we want to give him more snaps? We've seen that in a limited role, Eric Murray has been a good player for the Houston Texans. When he's out there too much longer, then you start to see some of those breakdowns in his game, breakdowns in coverages. And if we go back immediately to Sunday's matchup, then you see a big yard TD given up because of safety help and things of that nature, whiffing on tackles. So I think what'll hurt the Houston Texans is just the bottom half of that safety room / nickel room, getting guys, back in a place where everything is more complimentary, like DeMeco Ryan said. But I do feel like, Sarge, we've seen Denico Autry miss time, Will Anderson miss time, Azeez miss time,
Henry
has missed time,
Kamari
Lassiter has missed time. We've seen this defense have to overcome injuries and all kind of things time and time again. And for me, there's a growing feeling that this defense isn't going to hold up anymore. It feels like there's a moment, there's going to be a moment where this defense, won't be able to overcome the injuries, the bad halves, either from themselves or from the offense, or 4 quarters of bad football from the offense, inconsistent football from the offense. It feels like after 10 plus weeks of giving everything that they have, this defense is going to cave, and there's no hope right now that the offense will save them. And so,
John, I disagree.
I say that because losing Jalen Pitre, some people may nitpick everything about his game from this year, but there, again, is no player on this roster that can replace what he's done. And again, that's going to put this defense in a bad situation, and they're back against the wall, because now you're going to count on guys to do more that either A, hasn't had the time to do more because of lack of snaps, or B, has already shown you to jeopardize that they're jeopardize this defense when they got more time out on the field. So I think this is one of those moments that it may break the Texans. It may.
I don't think so, John. I got to disagree with you, man. I don't think that this defense is going to cave, only because you got too many players on the defensive side of the ball that wants it too bad, that's been there before. Like, Danielle Hunter is a veteran. He's not finna just allow this defense to cave like that. And as long as him and Will can stay on the field together, that's a disruptive force. Denico Autry is not. And once you get Foley Fatukasi back,
can I say something? All of the guys you named are in that position up front that I have no worry for. We had no worry for them guys Sunday against the Tennessee Titans. So you watched them dominate. The worry comes from time and time again. Okay, 3rd and 11, we allow 63 yards. Okay, 3rd and whatever, we coverage. I think that's where the concern for me is. But
that means so you know what that means? That means that now Matt Burke and DeMeco Ryans are going to have to adjust. Yeah. They're just going to have to adjust and be able to, and they're going to have to do some different things, throw some after the bye week. The good thing is they have a late bye week. And so during that bye week, now they got a game to see what it's going to, they got a game to see what it's going to be like without Jalen Pitre when they play Jacksonville Jaguars this Sunday. And then they go into the bye week. So now it's basically like a 2-week stretch where they can say, okay, this is what we can do. And like I said, John, I'm going to be honest with you. I think that you can slide Jimmy into that position and still get the run support and still get some of the coverage. Still get some of the coverage that you got. You're not going to get like the best coverage. And that's because, time it always wins, John. You cannot stop Father Time. And so Jalen is younger than Jimmy. That's why you've seen some different things. But Jimmy's still a wily veteran. That interception, that pick six that he had on Sunday, John, the way that he broke on that ball, that's just instinct. So if you can keep him in those type of matchups, because if we're being honest, if you get Jalen in one-on-one coverage and deep and have to have him hold somebody when they're running deep routes, he loses out as well. And
Absolutely.
So that's something that he's learning. I mean, we've seen that in the 3rd and 3 against the New York Jets. You line him up on Devontae Adams, which is it's hard to hold him anyway. But you lose. Jalen wasn't the strongest when it comes to coverage as well. So you slide Jimmy and you use him for what you're using for, and then you make up on the back end. Now, where it's going to hurt is they're going to have to put somebody else in there, because you didn't just lose Jalen Pitre, you also lost the backup in Kadar Holman. So now nothing can happen to Stingley, nothing can happen to Lassiter unless you're ready to play Jeff Okudah again.
This is what DeMeco Ryans had to say about the loss of Jalen Pitre.
Well, Jalen has brought he's been a true impact player for us. Just being around the ball, just causing interceptions, forcing fumbles. He's just been really active, very instinctive player for us. He's been all over the field, and he's made a lot of plays for us, and just miss his instincts, miss his playmaking ability. We're going to miss that, right? So we got to pick it up, and we got to go. We got to move forward. We got to press forward. Whoever else steps in, we got to hit the ground running. All right. Thank you.
Hey, John, I ain't gonna lie. DeMeco look like he could still give a couple of defensive snaps.
I don't think. Yeah, he probably could, but maybe literally a couple. Was the bar set too high for CJ Stroud? That is what we have next. And honestly, Sarge, I can't wait to hear your perspective about this, because you have brought me over to the light. So we'll talk about that and more on today's show. Are you guys missing somebody this holiday season and you want them to be a part of your festivities from afar? Texan fans, we have the perfect gift for you. Skylight Frame is the touchscreen digital photo frame your whole family will love. Upload thousands of photos with your phone and watch them appear in seconds. It's easy to use. Setup only takes about 60 seconds or less. It only takes a tap on your phone to send new photos to your frame across the country. It's the fastest, easiest way to keep loved ones in the loop. They'll feel so much more connected to you with Skylight Frames. Also, we're confident that you'll love Skylight. They offer free 120-day returns. And now a special limited time offer for our listeners. Get $20 off your purchase of a Skylight Frame when you go to skylightframe.com/NFL. That is skylightframe.com/NFL to get $20 off your purchase now at skylightframe.com/NFL. And also, Texan fans, it hasn't been the season that we all expected it to be, but you can take your football experience to the next level with FanDuel, America's number one sportsbook. They are here to make every Texan game even more exciting. Right now, you can dive into the season's hottest Texans props and odds. They are a 5.5-point favorite in this Sunday matchup against the Jacksonville Jaguars. And the total right now is 43.5 points. So you can go to FanDuel to check that out and potentially win you some extra money. And FanDuel has the odds for the Texans' first scoring play at plus 60 for a touchdown, plus 320 for a field goal, and if you're feeling lucky, plus 10,000 if the Texans' first score is a safety. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page you place your bet. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel. Welcome back in, Battle Red Nation and Locked On Texans listeners and viewers. Big Sarge had an opportunity to ask head coach DeMeco Ryans about the expectations placed upon sophomore quarterback CJ Stroud, and this is what DeMeco Ryans had to say.
His rookie season, coming into his sophomore season, do you think that there was more added pressure for him to be, I know better than what he was? You always want to see improvement, but do you think that the bar was set entirely too high for him to be able to grow into that?
Yeah, for me, when it comes to the bar being set. Who sets the bar for someone? Like there's no higher bar set for us as coaches and players than the bars we set for ourselves. So there's no added or external pressures that raises the bar. We have to live up to some expectation. Our expectation is always for our players, our coaches to continue to grow and continue to get better, and that doesn't change.
John, he says,
Take it over.
Who sets the bar? I really want to say, you do, coach. You're the coach. You're the head coach. You set the bar. You set the expectations. Of course, because, John, this is where you walk that fine line, right? This is where you walk that fine line. Because if CJ comes in talking about personal goals, now it's, well, you're not looking out for the team, right? You're not looking out for the team. You're talking about what you want to do. You want to be Pro Bowl. You want to be all pro. You want to throw for this many yards. You want this many, like you want your personal accolades, but you're not looking for the team. So now CJ comes in, and now the bar is set from the coaching standpoint of, this is what we want to see from you, CJ. This is what we want you to do. Now, do they align with your personal goals? Of course they can. Of course they can align with his personal goals. But he'll put the team first. So who sets the bar? Head coach DeMeco Ryans from the jump, and then offensive coordinator Bobby Slowick, and then Gerard Johnson. All three of those sets the bar for CJ coming into the season, and this is what he wants you. This is what they want you to do. Now, with that being said, John, some of the things that they're asking CJ to do is a lot for a second-year quarterback. John, when we look at CJ and some of the things that, we like to talk about how he's regressed, right? How he's taken that sophomore slump. And, John, I got to look at, and I'm saying to myself, when you look at his play, he is having a sophomore slump, and it goes right into what everybody's saying. But I feel like one of the reasons why he's having a sophomore slump is not because he's having a sophomore slump. It's because what's around him that's causing him to be able to do that. CJ is one of those quarterbacks that can make all the throws. CJ is one of those quarterbacks who's highly intelligent. CJ is one of those quarterbacks who doesn't make the same mistake twice. He's one of them. And we've seen that. His rookie year, he's one of them. Now, this year, what have we seen? We've seen him throw short. He's been inaccurate. He's thrown dirt balls. He's overthrown. He's thrown bad interceptions. And you start to see that, and you're wondering, well, what's happening? Oh, well, CJ's throwing off his back foot. Well, CJ's bad mechanics. Okay, so how many times do you think that CJ can be hit? How many times do you think that CJ can be sacked? And don't get me wrong, some of that is his fault. Some of that is something that he just can't control. If you want CJ to be effective, we've seen what he can do, John, when he has the time, when he has the protection. He'll pick a defense apart. He'll come to the line and he can see exactly what he needs to do. But then as soon as he drops back, he has 2 or 3 defenders in his face. Now what? Now I got to try to find an alley, an avenue. I got to find a space so I can be able to execute the play. Oh, by the way, Bobby has me dropping 5 to 7 yards on this play. 5 to 7 steps, excuse me. So now I'm doing a 5 to 7 step drop back, and not including the extra 3 or 4 yards I got to take to get away from this defender who's in my face, these defensive tackles that's coming right up the middle, or this linebacker who's done this delayed blitz that nobody's picking up. Now I got a defender in my face while I'm still trying to see who's supposed to be where. So when he says, who sets the bar? You all set the bar, but you also got to put him in a position to be better. Listen, I know CJ has been criticized. I criticized him, and then I got some backlash, and, parent being a parent, so I understand. As a parent, I understand why I got that backlash. But on the flip side of that, I'm saying to myself, you can't keep making up for Bobby Slowick. You can't keep making up for an inefficient offensive line. I know, John, you chopping at the bits to talk. So
no, because I think this is one of those situations where I put the blame on CJ Stroud for the last 2 weeks, but that is because he is now a byproduct of bad coaching from the offensive coordinator, Bobby Slowick. Like, we've talked about it all year. And the bar being set too high for CJ Stroud is the conversation that I think that bar being set, to your point, DeMeco Ryans, it start with you. And honestly, it starts with ownership on down in this conversation, because not only did CJ Stroud go on a little press run this offseason, we heard a lot more. We saw a lot more from the McNairs.
Yeah.
So I think it was a franchise thing that everybody set this bar high, but the support for that bar has not been there.
Yeah.
And CJ has been trying to hold up that bar with everything given that he's had to go through for a long time. And it just seems like, again, there was no support for him from the sidelines when I look at the offensive coordinator. I think the lack of deep shots or missing Nico for those 5 games really hurt this team. Last year, not DeMeco, CJ Stroud, 8 touchdowns, 0 interceptions on 20-plus yards, or 1,100 yards last year when you look at all of those plays, pass attempts that went down the field for 20 or more yards. This year, that's where we've seen more of his interceptions. So I think not having Nico Collins there hurts. I think not having a true downfield weapon hurts. I think the amount of
losing Diggs, too.
Losing Diggs, of course. I think the amount of 5 to 7 drops when your offensive line isn't able to hold up anybody has hurt this offense, because they are still gunning for those down the field shots that they had last year, and it's just not here happening right now this year. So the bar being set for CJ, yeah, and my best friend texted me and said, man, maybe we crowned CJ too early. And I say, no, we didn't crown him too early. There's so much going on behind the scenes. It's just on Sundays we're getting 4 quarters of what we see.
Yeah.
And the storyline is everybody's seeing it. Hey, Bobby Slowick, and we got to throw in DeMeco Ryans in this case as well. They have not used what they have to accurately support CJ. And from day one, Sarge, it has been CJ got to save us. And I think that's been the message from Bobby Slowick since the offseason.
Exactly, John. And, I'm like, CJ can't walk on water. Like CJ cannot walk on water. And so and he's also young, John. What is CJ? He's 23 years old?
23 years old.
You're putting, listen, a franchise quarterback has to grow into being a franchise quarterback. He grows into that. He can have all of the characteristics, but he still has to grow into it. And he has to, of course, live up to it. You're not going to get a franchise quarterback in his second year saying that this is what we're going to do. CJ, just let him go ahead and walk on water. He can make everything. CJ can make everything better. No, CJ can't make everything better, because now the expectations that you're putting on him, he can't make mistakes. And in the NFL, DeMeco Ryans said it on Monday, hey, everybody makes mistakes in the NFL.
Everybody makes mistakes.
Unfortunately, CJ can't make them because his is glaring when they do, and then everybody wants to criticize him for that. Now, don't get me wrong, because I know there's going to be some people in the YouTube comments, they're going to say, CJ's been playing bad. Sarge just over there caping, blah, 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 blah. No, I'm not saying that CJ hasn't played bad in certain situations on his own. But, John, you brought this up, right? And I was talking to two of my colleagues on Monday after the DeMeco Ryans press conference. They were like, well, he didn't have Nico for this long. Then he didn't have Diggs. Well, John, if that's the case, right? If that's the case, you're a parent, right? If your child needs something, you're going to make the necessary adjustments. Even though if you don't have it, you're going to make the necessary adjustments to get it, right? Yeah. No Nico, no Diggs. Okay, Bobby, that's on you. You designed all of this. Hey, look, okay, so now we're not going to be able to run. Let's take this part of the playbook and say, let's put it over here. Hey, Gerard, come here. Hey, Ben, come here. We need to put this thing together because we don't have this now. How can we take advantage and use John Mechie? How can we use more Dalton Schultz? How can we use Tank Dell? What can we get from Xavier Hutchinson? You have to go in and make these necessary adjustments you can't keep running. You can't. Xavier Hutchinson is not Nico Collins. They may have the same stature, but they can't do the same things. Hey, he's not there yet. So
So
you get
I want to,
one.
can we, let's, because I want to
All
continue
right.
this because I think those have been the problems we've talked about for 16 weeks dating back to the offseason,
Gotcha.
preseason, since August. So
I'm
I
taking
think
offering. I'm preaching over here.
that's the perfect way. We're going to take an A and B selection from the choir. And then when we come back, we'll talk about how the Texans' problems have been hiding in plain sight this entire time. Hey, but Texan fans, listen here. Before we talk about that, this is the perfect time to let you guys know about Hillsdale College. Time is our most precious commodity, so don't waste it scrolling through mind-numbing content for hours and hours and hours. How can you spend it wisely to improve yourself? History, economics, the great works of literature, all of that and more have been offered to you to learn on Hillsdale's platforms, Hillsdale College platform. So our sponsors at Hillsdale College is offering more than 40 free online courses like The Rise and Fall of the Roman Republic, The Great American Story, A Land of Hope, and so much more. All of Hillsdale courses are self-paced so that you can start wherever, whenever, tune in, whenever, wherever, and plus you can go deeper with readings, quizzes, discussions, or you can just enjoy the lectures. Go to hillsdale.edu/lockedon to enroll today. There is no cost and it's easy to get started. That's hillsdale.edu/lockedon to register. Again, hillsdale.edu/lockedon to register. Welcome back in, Locked On Texans listeners and viewers. I think before we even talk about the Texans' problems hiding in plain sight, this is what Bobby Slowick said to start off this year.
Yeah, I think he's always been all in on it. You know, he understands how valuable that is as a quarterback to just be able to stay on the field, get to third and manageables. And that's really what it's about. You know, it's my job to get number one as open as possible all the time. But, you know, not always going to do that. And when I'm wrong, how right can you make me? Are we wrong? Like, man, I just called a play and we lost 4 yards. Or can I call a play and be wrong and we gain 6, you know? And that started towards the end of camp. That happened a lot. You know, he really is bought into staying on rhythm, getting the ball out on time and you know, really getting it to our playmakers' hands as often as possible. And that's not easy to do. Like, you have to be very deliberate in how you approach every day to go put that into action. And it definitely has grown.
If I'm right, how right? If I'm wrong, how right can you make me? Those are the words from Bobby Slowick talking about CJ Stroud. Sorry, the problems have been there for Houston, and we just chose to kind of not put a magnifying glass on it as much as we probably should have. We talked about all of the potential of this team, specifically offense. But how many times, and you were out there more than I was, how many times did you leave the training camp sessions and think to yourself, man, the defense had a day?
Yeah, a lot.
A lot, right? And now we are 12 weeks into the season. Where does that defense rank? Top 3 in the NFL, top 5 in the NFL, top 3. And then now we look at the offense and we said, man, you know what? Shaq Mason was looking a little old today. Or, man, okay, we ain't seeing Laramie out here again. This is day number whatever. We ain't seeing Laramie. Man, why we ain't seeing more with John Mechie and CJ Stroud in his first team offense? Why they giving Stephon Diggs break? So now we're seeing all of these things in August, 12 weeks into the regular season. We're thinking to ourselves, man, Laramie Tunsil does look a little slower, a little step taken back, more penalties we have to watch. Man, Shaq Mason does look super slow this year. Man, it's taken 10 weeks to get John Mechie on the same page. These problems have been there for the Houston Texans this entire time.
And John, I know that. Listen, we talk about John Mechie a lot. I like John Mechie, and I know what John Mechie was in college, just like you did. You know, and it's sad that that he had to go through what he went through as far as his the health issues that he had when he first got into the league, coming in as a rookie, missing his entire season, and then having his second season having to recover. So this is his third season, but he's still recovering and trying. I mean, not recovering. This is like his rookie year because he's just not getting on the field. John, you remember through training? Who was it? Was it Ben Skoranek? That was the wide receiver, right? That was the wide receiver that they had in training camp, right? And people were like, I would take Ben Skoranek over John Mechie. And I'm saying to myself, what do you think this is? Paper football? You think this is Madden? What football are you playing? There's no possible way. And I'm sitting out here watching. Yes, let me tell you this: Ben Skoranek is a good football player. He hustles a lot. He's not the route runner that John Mechie is. And you're looking, and you got John Mechie taking third team snaps in training camp. Yeah. You got John Mechie taking snaps with Davis Mills and Case Keenum. And I'm saying to myself, you're not improving him, and you're not preparing yourself. Yeah, you're not. And yeah, Tim, you're not preparing yourself for if something happens. And something happened, John. And now here we are. And now the coaching staff is looking like, wait a minute, what we supposed to do? You're supposed to. Let me go ahead and get in my real quickly, John, because Big Sarge is for a reason. Let me get in my military bag. John, you start off with a mission. Then you know what you have? You have a contingency plan for the mission. If the mission fails, and if the mission fails and the contingency plan fails, then guess what? You got a contingency plan for that contingency plan for the mission. And Bobby is going in there and he does not have a contingency plan, period, coming into the season. You know what his contingency plan was? When all else fails, CJ gonna save us.
And throw it up to Nico. To your point, man, this was a problem when they lost to the Ravens in the playoffs last year, right? Yep. Couldn't get no wide receiver help.
Yep.
And you go into this offseason, right? And you game plan for making sure Stephon Diggs gets involved and understanding that Nico Collins is your team's number one receiver. But to the John Mechie point, my eyes never fooled me. Steven Nelson was on the Texan Space last night on Monday night. Shout out to my boy Barrett. He was on there talking about a lot of different things. I want to get into a lot of those things right now, but one thing that stood out was, hey, man, there were days John Mechie made me look tired, made me look old out there. He was talking about year 2 with John Mechie, and he said basically Houston was using him on the scout team.
Yeah.
And so we saw that a little bit this year. And my issue with the coaching staff, if it's anything in the world, when you leave that Baltimore Raven game and you see, man, we got an issue with our wide receivers getting open. My issue has been, why wouldn't you maximize all of your weapons to the best of their abilities? And I think that's where we've seen the drop off with CJ Stroud, because he had to really rely on the deep passes to Nico Collins. Okay, he was able to connect with those early in the year before he went down. And then now we have plays set to make sure we get Stephon Diggs involved. Tank Dell is going to get his targets. But then I got a John Mechie that I can't get the ball to because he's not on the field. And when he is on the field, he's blocking. He's blocking DNs. He's blocking linebackers. That's what we're using him for. Dalton Schultz, who just signed an extension again, where is he in the game plan?
And you shouldn't use Dalton Schultz as a blocker. That's
as a blocker. He is not.
The Dallas Cowboys didn't keep him. That's one of the reasons why Dallas did not keep him, because he is not a strong blocker. If you want him to catch passes, he'll catch passes. You can't use him in the run game like you want to use him. But John, real quickly, let me say this: if John Mechie was with the Minnesota Vikings, you see a totally different John Mechie. If John Mechie was with the Green Bay Packers, you'll see totally different. If John Mechie was with the Los Angeles Rams, you'll see totally different. And you know what even if he was with the Cincinnati Bengals, even though I know that they have 2, but I'm just saying, John, what we're talking about is experienced play callers who knows how to use everybody. And that's one thing that Bobby has not learned just yet. And once again, I'll say this again. I was on the Spaces with when Steven Nelson was on there. I wasn't there for the whole 4 hours, but I was there. And one thing that Steven Nelson said is the same thing that I have been saying this entire year. It was almost like if you close your eyes, you hear Sarge saying it. Maybe it was too much for a second-year play caller.
We'll have more Texans talk throughout the week. Make sure you follow us on Twitter at Locked On Texans and subscribe, like, and comment to the Locked On Texans podcast on YouTube. Give me a follow on Twitter as well at John_Hickman12.
And you can follow me on the app formerly known as Twitter at Big Star Sports with the Z at the end.
Until next time, ladies and gentlemen, peace.